Another presentation, Key Insights from the Inaugural Social Traders Report on Identified Social Enterprises by Tara Anderson, who is the CEO of Social Traders. Tara's passion is blending business and purpose to deliver sustainable impact. Social Traders' goal is to make social enterprise business as usual. They support the social enterprise sector to thrive and work with big business to buy from social enterprise and expand their ESG program. Tara is a pragmatic idealist with international experience across social enterprise, charities, social innovation, and for-purpose intermediaries from the UK, Europe, and Australia. Tara holds an MBA from Bayes Business School in the UK, specialised in social enterprise business models, and a master's in social innovation from the
University of Danube.
The University of Danube. My apologies. Apologies. This is my third MC event this week, and my brain's a little bit fried, so my apologies for that one. But from the Danube University, thank you so much there, Tara. In Austria, focused on collective impact as a tool for collaboration at scale. So please, a big round of applause for Tara Anderson.
Thank you. Can everyone hear that okay? Yes, great. So we need to stand up and just stretch for a second because I feel like we've been sitting for a little while and we need to, everyone's like, yes, please, just stretch it out.
Sure.
Just 30 seconds of up and down. Is it 45 minutes before we're meant to stand up and down? I never do that, but I know we're meant to. So I encourage everybody else to do as I say, not what I do, or whatever that saying is. Great. So if we're feeling a little more comfy, a little more relaxed, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so going up a level to the bigger umbrella across the social enterprise ecosystem. We've heard some fantastic stories from people just here about some of the challenges and the fun and the joy and the frustrations of running social enterprise businesses. But now we want to pull it up and have a look at the sector as a whole, which is what Social Traders is here for. So we are going to talk about, we might have some text formatting issues, so we'll have some fun with slides. We'll see how we go. But that says the report on identified social enterprises, RISE, which is the newest piece of research that Social Traders has just put out in the last month or so. But before we get into the detail of that, I just want to, pulling us back up to that bigger picture again, a lot of what we talk about at Social Traders is reimagining the economy. That's what we're ultimately here for. So we imagine a world where there's no such thing as social enterprise because it's just business. It's just how business is done. Every single business in the economy exists not just to please their shareholders, but to create social and environmental impacts. That's the vision that we see, where we want to be able to look back how long it takes, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and we get some fun interactive echoes in the process. Because it was exciting, right? I feel like this is did someone put a special effect on the remote? I don't know. Now we've gone out. So I'll just go with me here. Looking back 50 years, 100 years, however long it takes to be able to say, remember that time when business existed just to make profit? Wasn't that weird? Wasn't that strange? That's what we're aiming for. And that may sound ridiculously idealistic, optimistic, but it's practical idealism that I think we need to hold on to. We all share that in this room, I'm sure, but it's about taking that big picture hope and optimism of a different kind of economy and then pulling it back down into what we can do today and what we can understand today and do differently. That's why we're here at Social Traders, to make social enterprise business as usual so that we can change the economy. And one of the ways that we do that is through things like this latest research that we've done. We are a national industry body for social enterprise. For those that haven't come across us, we've been around since 2008. And since then, we've, in a range of different ways, supported the social enterprise sector to thrive. That's our vision. It has been for that time and will continue to be. We've supported the sector in lots of different ways with research, capacity building, advocacy, finance, startup accelerators. And in most recent times, we've focused on social procurement. So we go out and we engage with big business and with government, tell them the story of social enterprise, get them excited, and then encourage them to buy from social enterprises like some of the wonderful ones that you just saw on the stage that are at the Purpose Precinct and that are all around the country. We are a certifier of social enterprises in Australia. We've got 660 that are certified now. So you heard mention of those at the Purpose Precinct. that's to avoid the social washing problem that we have. We've been doing this for nearly 7 years now. And it's so that we can make sure those that are genuinely doing the work of being a social enterprise are recognised as such, as opposed to those that would like to call themselves a social enterprise when it's convenient, like there might be when a social procurement contract's on the table or a grant's available. All of a sudden, there are many more social enterprises in the economy than there were before. So we're here to help make sure that those that are the genuine ones doing the work are getting recognised for the work that they're doing. And then we work with businesses, as I said. So there's 150 in our community at the moment, and they're big business too. There's some of the biggest governments along the eastern seaboard, some big construction companies, groups like Australia Post, Microsoft, these kind of businesses that are now looking at social enterprise and how they can engage with them. And that's what gets us really excited, because this is where you change hearts and minds of people that hold power and influence across the economy. So that's a bit about what we do. And this research is part of that. So for us, it's really important. We've heard individual stories here. There are many social enterprises across the economy. But for us as a sector to gain traction and gain attention, we have to talk as one. We have to be a united voice. We have to work together, collaboratively, connect with each other so that when we go out and tell our story of our piece of the puzzle, then we're actually talking about the whole sector so that people are getting an understanding of what social enterprise is and does, and then where your piece or an individual social enterprise fits into that. It's really important in building that buy-in, because if you can imagine, so I've got a marketing and comms background. So for messages to land, it's all about consistency and simplicity, saying the same thing in the same way over and over again. And if we can all do that in a shared way, that's how we start to change the conversation and get real traction. So this research is part of tools that we're offering to help us be able to do that. It builds on what's come before. So a little bit about where this research came from. For those that may not know about some of the research in the sector, there was a report finding Australia's social enterprise sector research done in 2016 and 2010. There was a Map for Impact program done in Victoria, which was a Victorian piece of research on the sector. And then the Business for Good report produced recently by Social Enterprise Australia. So these were all different pieces of research over time. And what we've tried to do with this next piece of research is layer on what's come before and go a little bit deeper and continue to add to that conversation. It builds on some of Social Traders research that we've done before too. So previously, the last couple of years, we've produced a report called PACE, which is the Profile of Australia's Certified Social Enterprises. That was looking at in depth at those that are certified and the data that we had on them, the type of impact they created, the type of work they were doing, the size of that sector and group of social enterprises. And this year, we've taken it one step forward with RISE, the Report on Identified Social Enterprises, building out beyond just those that are certified and creating a bigger pool to have a look at. So what RISE is, it's a look at nearly 6,000 social enterprises all across Australia. It's the largest data set that we've got on social enterprise that we've ever had in Australia. And it includes economic and impact data. So previously there's been different dives in on kind of size and location type economic information, revenue, staff, that kind of thing. This includes impact data alongside that that we gain from our certified social enterprises. It's done by our team internally at Social Traders. We have a data and insights and research team, but we've also worked with 11 different partners on producing this report. For us, it's always important to work with the others in the sector that are doing similar types of work. The collaborators that you can see up there, there's 4 different countries that we work with too. So some of our friends over in Canada and in the UK and in Scotland, and academics and practitioners that work in Australia as well. So there's a QR code to download it, which I'll put up again at the end, but let's dive into it in a little bit more depth. Oh, slides. You're going to have to imagine with me about what they actually say. So what's in this data set, in this 6,000? We've got the Social Traders Certified Social Enterprises. So that's sitting at the first circle at the top there. So there was 632, I think, 6 maybe, that we've pulled out for that research. Then what we've done is added 2 other data sets alongside those that are certified. So at the bottom left, we have the Map for Impact data, which was the piece of research I mentioned before. That was the Victorian government having a look at the sector across Victoria. And then we've added data from the ACNC. So those that are charities that are also social enterprises because they generate more than 50% of their revenue from trade. So we've pulled all of that together. So what does it tell us? It tells us that social enterprises are really diverse. This is where it gets exciting again. First finding, special effects. It's actually timing itself quite well to the moments where it needs to do that. Really diverse. So when we look at the certified social enterprises, they support 21 different beneficiary groups. They've got 13 different legal structures, 17 sectors, and they operate across more than 40 different categories of products and services. So this is, as we always say, social enterprise. It's hard to kind of put your hands around it and figure out what it is because it's so broad. They can operate anywhere in the economy. They can offer all different types of products and services. And a lot of social enterprises, are known for things like cafes, but actually they do so many more different things than that. And the data also tells us things like most social enterprises, in terms of how they create their impact, are employment-focused social enterprises. More than half are WISEs, as they're called, work integrated social enterprises. The biggest cohort of people that social enterprises support are people with disabilities, which is interesting to note. So they support many. There's 21 different groups that they support, but it's people with disabilities that it's nearly half of those beneficiaries are people with disabilities. Interesting to know that when it comes to models that do community services that are more affordable or accessible, they have the greatest variety of legal structures. So it's in that cohort where there's many different types of social enterprises. And it's always really interesting explaining to funders or government, or maybe those that haven't come across social enterprise before, that it can be any legal structure. So it's not like it's a charitable model, a model with a boundary around it. That's what's so exciting and great about social enterprises. They can literally be anything. They can be sole traders all the way through to companies limited by guarantee, anything in between that, and all sorts of interesting group structures and combinations as well. So that's why the social enterprise model is such a great future place to head in the economy, because it can fit anywhere and it can be anything. This slide is the kind of core of the research that has my favorite information on it. So social enterprises, as we know, like as one in the sector, Kylie, who runs the Social Enterprise Network in New South Wales, describes social enterprise as if a charity and a business had a baby, it would be a social enterprise. That's what they do. That's what makes them both really unique and interesting, and also really hard to run, as we've been talking about. But the research shows us the kind of two parts of the social enterprise model, in that on the one hand, they are sustainable businesses, and on the other, they generate impact. So it helps us understand what exactly that looks like. So the first thing to note is what the research showed was that 86% of their revenue comes from trading, which really surprised us. This feels very high compared to what we expected it to be. And to clarify what that is, it's excluding grants and donations. So it's taking out all fundraising revenue and looking at just what's left over there, which is their trading activity, but also from income from investments as well. But this shows that they're businesses in their own right, which we knew that they were. But to quite a significant extent. So this is saying that, overall across the sector, it's only 14% of the revenue of social enterprises that needs to be subsidised or supported by government or philanthropy or other sources. 23% of them generate all of their revenue from trade. So they're fully sustainable businesses that operate in their own right, which again was quite high. We were quite surprised by that number. And quite cool, I think, is that 68% of them reported a net profit in the last year, which is higher than charities, yes, to be expected, but it's also higher than SMEs. So not only are these businesses sustainable in their own right and generating the impact they do, but they're doing it in a more profitable way than general traditional businesses in the economy, the small and medium-sized enterprises. And then if we jump over to the impact side of the equation, and this is looking at the certified social enterprises, because they're the ones where we have the impact data. So zooming in on that cohort of the 630, 27% of their revenue is spent on their impact costs. And impact costs are the costs they incur to deliver on their missions and their visions that traditional businesses don't have to incur. So they're things like if they're employing certain groups, people with disabilities, for example, the wraparound supports that need to be provided to enable those people to come into jobs. Or it's the additional costs when we were talking about, things around supply chains in the production of fashion, the additional costs that are incurred in buying more ethically, sourcing your products more ethically in order to supply an ethical product into the market. All those costs get captured. So 27% of revenue is spent on those costs that other businesses don't have to bear. And then also 43% of the people they employ would otherwise be shut out of work. So nearly half the staff of social enterprises are beneficiary groups, groups like people with disabilities, but also migrants and refugees, or young people, or long-term unemployed, or veterans. There's many, many different types. Nearly half of the people that social enterprises employed fit into those groups. And that's a big part, as we said, the employment model is the most common type of social enterprise that we see getting certified. And nearly half their staff are people that would otherwise struggle to find work. And then if we take those two statistics and apply them to the estimated 12,000 social enterprises in Australia, which was the Social Enterprise Australia estimate of the size of the market, that's $5.7 billion every single year that social enterprises are spending on these additional impact costs in order to create social and environmental outcomes, supply more ethical fashion products, help people with disabilities into work. They're doing all of that while operating a sustainable business, as any other business has to operate. The social enterprises have got superpowers to be able to do this stuff. And if you apply the 43% of people shut out of work to the 12,000 across Australia, that would be 89,000 people that wouldn't otherwise have jobs that are in work because of social enterprises. These are huge numbers. So this is back to that. It really did. This is where, as a sector, if we can talk about these numbers, this is where we take the individual social enterprise and the individual story and then put it into the context to say, as a social enterprise sector, look what it's doing for our economy, for our society. Look at the impact that it's having. So we're one piece of that story. And if we can engage people with this story, the bigger picture contribution to the economy, that this hidden sector, I often talk about it as a best kept secret. Social enterprise is this thing that's so unknown still, and it deserves to be in the spotlight, but it's using some of these facts and numbers like this that help us to then tell that story. One other thing from RISE to pull out is some of the actual numbers around the impact created by social enterprises. So when we look at that 27% of revenue that's spent on impact costs, these are the outcomes that they're creating. So the 6 that we capture at Social Traders, we've tried to standardize them as much as possible and narrow them down, just so we focus in on the things that all social enterprises that certify can tell us as part of their certification process. So hours of paid employment to those beneficiary groups, 16 million hours every single year. There's 13,000 employment pathway outcomes where people have come through a social enterprise and then got a job in the open labour market. Over 900,000 hours of employability training for those same groups. $231 million spent on community goods and services. So these are goods and services that are more affordable or more accessible for people that wouldn't otherwise be able to access them. $34 million in donations to charitable organisations through social enterprise models that have a profit redistribution mission, and 1.2 million tonnes of waste diverted from landfill. So again, these are huge numbers. This is just looking at the certified social enterprises. So that's just the 636 of them. So imagine applying that. If we talk about the 12,000, it's huge amounts of impact. And so again, these are the numbers that help to tell a story about why people should care about social enterprise, and then pulling that down as to why they should care about an individual social enterprise, change the way they purchase, do something differently. So off the back of the report, the two key things that we're recommending that we encourage everyone to join in calling for these things, along with others in the sector that are also calling for these things, is a federal government-backed social enterprise strategy. So this is a key call from Social Enterprise Australia, which Social Traders support and many others across the sector support too, so that we can grow the number and the impact of social enterprises. And it's looking at 4 key elements in there around, we call them the 4 Cs. So capability, access to customers, access to capital, and connections between different social enterprises, and the awareness raising piece. And then a social procurement strategy at Commonwealth level. So we've got one in Victoria where the Victorian government has a social procurement framework, which was mentioned just a bit earlier. That has driven big business to take up social enterprises as suppliers. It's had a huge impact on the market. Most social procurement work buying from social enterprises is happening in Victoria because there's a framework here. 54% of all of the activity around Australia through the members that Social Traders works with is in Victoria. Imagine if the Commonwealth got on board and put a policy in place at national level. It would have a huge impact. So we are very busily talking to many government people, politicians, all around the place about why this is a good idea. But it's going to take a lot of voice and momentum for us to be able to get this off the ground. But good conversations are happening, and new and different conversations at federal level all the time. And just to mention certification, if you're not a certified social enterprise, it's now freely available. We launched free certification as part of alongside the RISE report. So previously there were lots of different fee waivers on it, but we want to make sure that it's fully accessible for anyone that wants to be certified can be certified. So we've just taken that price barrier off it, so that whatever stage you're at or whatever you're experiencing within your business, affordability isn't a question. So that if you want to access it, you can. And one last piece of information to leave you with, there's a QR code to scan there, but with the RISE report, so that's a standalone piece that we produce. We'll produce it each year. We have for the last two. We've also created a digital platform. So all of that information in different formats is now on a live platform on the Social Traders website, where you can dive in and see it as it updates. So daily, as a new social enterprise gets certified, it will tick over and add that data in, and we're adding other data sets in over time as well. You can go into there and it's interactive, so you can play with it. So if you just want to have a look at social enterprises that are employing under 20 people, or just have a look at the ones that are generating over $2 million in revenue, or just the ones that are employment focused in their impact, whatever it might be, you can go in and have a look. So it just gives a really nice sense of the size and scope of the sector, and useful for us to just understand a bit more about the composition. Is it smaller businesses, larger businesses, what kind of impact are they creating? All of that's on the platform, so you can dive in and have a play. And last thought to leave you with is just kind of back to where we started, that imagine if we could grow the size of the social enterprise sector in Australia. We want them to be the business model of the future economy, so that they become the standard way of doing business. If we have a look at Scotland, they put a social enterprise strategy in place 10 years ago, 16% growth in the sector over there as a result of that strategy. If that happened in Australia, that would be 1,900 more social enterprises in the social enterprise community. And that'd be nearly $1 billion worth of impact costs being spent every year, additional impact contribution into the economy. So this is really significant stuff, because when we talk about this impact, this is a lot of numbers as opposed to the stories. But this is people, this is individual, this is lives changed. These are people that wouldn't have had opportunities if it wasn't for a social enterprise finding a way to do the really hard work of running a business and creating impact at the same time in order to support those people. And this is the serious stuff. This is the work that our economy, our society, our community should be doing, which is why we're so passionate about it and why we do the work like we have here, but work across the sector to see it grow, because we owe it to each other. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the future generations. If we're not doing this work, then we're missing the opportunity to create a better community, a more supportive community, where everyone has equal opportunity. That's what we're here for. So when the work's hard and it gets tough, we try and bring ourselves back to this to say, ultimately, if we can create these opportunities for these individuals and then grow that exponentially across the economy, that's the work. That's what we need to be doing. That's what we're here for. So that's a bit about RISE and the data. I think we've got time for some questions, maybe, if anyone has any, or comments. About 5 minutes. Yep. Yeah.
What is the percent of the social enterprise, I suppose, profit goes towards supporting social cause?
Mm-hmm.
I know about 10 years ago they were starting to talk about lobbying to the government about tax cuts or tax benefits. Is that still happening? Because I think to increase it, you probably need to incentivise business.
Yeah. It's one of the recommendations in the report. So I mentioned the first two, but we would love to see same kind of tax incentives and things that are applied to charities applied to social enterprises. And government says, how do we identify them? And we say, well, we have certification to do that. So we're suggesting, insurance. insurance premiums being looked at differently for social enterprises, DGR status being applied to social enterprises, similar tax incentives. If we could have those same mechanisms that are already used for other things applied to the social enterprise sector, that would really, really help. And it's, it's an argument that makes itself when you say to government, the social enterprises are creating public value. If you just create those mechanisms, incentives, there's an additional $1 billion worth of public value that will be created if we could just grow that 16% the same as Scotland did. So,
just following on with that, do you think there could be room for getting the Victorian government to back, given the economic impact they've had, to back and say, hey, federal government, this has worked for us. You should do that on the federal level.
Yeah, and they've been fantastic. So they, the Victorian Minister for Employment, who the Employment Department was the one that set the social enterprise strategy and the framework, worked with Treasury on the framework. They were with us in Canberra earlier this year. We ran an event with Social Enterprise Australia, and the Minister came and spoke at that event. I was talking to her just last week at Parliament House. They ran a social enterprise festival. Vicky Ward, she's the Minister for Employment in Victoria. Yeah, so they've been great is the short answer. And yes, and they're really keen to help us do that. It's great to see governments collaborating, right? Doesn't always happen.
Hi, Tara. Oh, sorry, very loud. Carmel Riley here. I'm the CEO of CRSE Group, so one of your certified social enterprises. And I'm really interested by the statistic you showed about the number of social enterprises who are delivering their impact through 100% of trade. So my question to you is, what's your forecast about this? Is this a good sign for long-term viability or not?
We think that it is. And as I said, that was the most surprising thing that we saw out of the report. Even the 86% that of overall revenue being generated from trade and 23% completely. It shows that you can run a social enterprise model completely as a business. Important to note in there, though, that different types of impact creation are going to be different. So if you run, there's 3 types of impact models that we categorize at Social Traders. One is the one that creates jobs. One is the one that delivers community services that are more affordable and accessible. And one is a donation model where they donate more than 50% of their profit to a charity. That one, it's very easier to run as a completely sustainable business with 100% revenue from trade, because you can offer any product and service in the market and just take the profit and work with your charity partners. But when it comes to employment models, for example, really difficult because the wraparound costs for the people that you support are going to cost more than employing other people in the economy. So for those businesses, they're always going to need a bit more of that top up. So there's variation in there is the thing to note. But to answer your question, do we see this as a positive sign? Yeah, absolutely. We were really happily surprised to see that, and the higher net profit that social enterprises make compared to SMEs in the economy as well. Really, really interesting.
Thank you for pointing out the variation part, because I guess from a lived experience perspective, depending on the product or service you're delivering, I think that capability is really dependent on market conditions. So we really proudly were sitting at 91% driven through trade.
Amazing.
When we had ideal market conditions.
Yeah.
So, when I look back, if I could have done things differently over the last 18 months, I actually would have diversified my funding to better respond to market conditions. And it could be my autistic brain here, but sometimes the downside of those kind of hero statements is that we get a bit clouded about the right way forward. And I was very, very stubborn that my sustainability would be dependent upon the goods and services that we delivered. And I wish I'd been able to relax myself a bit and go, it's okay to diversify. It's actually common sense.
100%. That's a great point. And it also varies by industry too. So this is the umbrella, that's the average, but there's the variability by impact type, but also, the economy at the moment isn't in a great position. So different social enterprises in different industries are struggling more than others at the moment, which is just normal because they're businesses like any other business. I think that's time being called. So Thanks, everyone.